What's up, traveler? Welcome to the Stellar Highway. My name is Motormind, and I'll be your guide tonight. It's comic book day again. Wanted to talk about a few books that I picked up. I wanted to talk about Infinity Countdown Darkhawk number 4. I thought this was going to run 5 issues, so I was kind of surprised at the abrupt ending. And you can tell this thing is a little bit rushed. They really had to wrap it up quickly. So this is not really the strongest issue. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. There's some fighting and things like that. But it kind of suffers. For one thing, the fight is basically just Darkhawk jumping in front of Nova, or Nova jumping in front of Darkhawk, just kind of swippity-swappity, and it doesn't make for a very interesting looking fight because the Raptors all look so similar. They're basically the same, and it appears that the Raptors and the fraternity of Raptors are completely destroyed in this book. So, I understand not wanting to give each Raptor a unique design just to kill them off like in this issue. But it really kind of hurts the fight. I praise the first issue had a nicely choreographed fight between Darkhawk and Deathshead. But this fight is just like the heroes jumping in front of each other repeatedly, fighting identical-looking enemies. It just is not that great. But I do appreciate the giant robot Darkhawk thing. That was pretty awesome. There's a bit at the beginning here where Nova's on the trail of his brother, who has become Dark Starhawk, thanks to Chris's amulet. While he's got the amulet, Chris can't change back into a human, and he's stuck as Darkhawk. So obviously he's after Robbie's brother. He's in hot pursuit. And here we see, he's completely destroyed the warship thanks to his giant Darkhawk form. It's really cool. This does not match at all the cover art or the promo art from the previous issue, but this still looks cool as hell. I really like this. He looks awesome. So basically, Richard tries to jump in and reason with his brother, and his brother's completely checked out, and he ends up swatting Richard away. To which Chris responds by catching Richard and putting him inside his body. He's like, "Hey, I got this. Stay in here. Stay safe." Richard's like, "I don't want to be inside you." He's like, "This is weird." He's like, "I have to get out there and help my brother." Well, Deathshead and Razor, who's taken this hawk-like form, they're inside. He's like, "Tell me how to get out of here. Tell me how to save my brother." He's like, "Well, there's no exit. Chris has to let you out." And he's like, "Well, then I'll make an exit." And so he really hampers the fight by blowing out of Chris's chest. And he's like, "Oh, Richard, what have you done?" He's like, "You hit everything that passes for a major organ. I've already got a hole in my chest." He's having a hard time focusing and keeping the configuration. And then they kind of take the fight to the ship. And this is what I'm talking about. They're just fighting sort of these identical looking, everybody looks quite a bit the same. There's, this guy getting blasted, that guy getting blasted. It's not the strongest fight scene. It is fun, it is cool. Chris does use some kind of arm cannons, and in the end, they're kind of bailed out by Dark Starhawk. He starts to regain his cosmic identity, he starts to regain his godhood, and basically he turns on Geyer and destroys him. And thanks to a little shenanigans with Deathshead, they're able to detonate the warship and seemingly take care of the rest of the Raptors. So that problem was solved lickety-split thanks to a little bit of clever storytelling, happy coincidences and things like that. And then you get this sort of painful, sort of bittersweet exchange, because Darkhawk Chris has to get the amulet to both save himself and save Nova's brother. So he just violently rips it out of Nova's brother's chest, to which Nova responds poorly to, obviously. But he's like, "Hey, he would have destroyed Earth. I had to stop him. I had to get the amulet back to save myself." He's like, I had to make a hard choice. But Nova's not hearing any of it. He's just like, "What did you do to my brother? Next time I see you, I'm putting you in a cell." And so it's kind of a bittersweet ending, because Chris, ends up okay. He ends up with the amulet. He's able to change back into a human, but basically his friendship with Nova is kaput at this point. So Chris heads home, back to Earth. He's reunited with Miranda. He decides to take the job at Code Blue with the police, and he's having a dream which turns into a nightmare, which is invaded by Sleepwalker. And he says, being Darkhawk will not be enough. I need you to become like me, become a sleepwalker. I guess the mindscape has been invaded by the Infinity Stones and the effects of the Infinity Stones. So this is really cool because these are two heroes that are kind of like associated with each other just because of the time they both kind of existed. And I was a big fan of both of them. I mean, much more Darkhawk than Sleepwalker, but it's cool to see these guys share a page. I've never known them to work together, so this will be cool. I'm interested to see where this is going. I had no idea there was an Infinity War Sleepwalker coming, so I'll definitely be checking that out. And for those of you who have been kind of keeping up with Sleepwalker, he did recently appear in Lockjaw, the Lockjaw mini, and I think it's in issue 4. And when the heroes of that book vanish, there's a little gag bit where Sleepwalker considers growing a beard. If everyone was on the same page, it would have been cool if Sleepwalker pulled his hood back and revealed himself to have a beard. It would have been a nice nod to people that are kind of keeping up with the continuity. But missed opportunity there. Really, this book is kind of a rushed missed opportunity. They had a limited time to tell the story. They really spent all of their time explaining a lot of things in the first 3 issues, so they really had to wrap this up fast, and the book kind of suffers as a result, but it's not bad. But let me know what your thoughts on this book are below in the comments. The second book I want to talk about tonight is Sideways number 6. This is the book that I have been anticipating since this series kicked off. We finally get our Uncle Ben moment in this book, and I have to say I'm a little disappointed. It didn't really carry the emotional punch that I was hoping for. There's some storytelling choices in this that are, not real strong in my opinion. Basically, Derek, there's a bit of a recap. It's told in hindsight by Derek, the events of this book. So it kind of takes some of the urgency away from it. It kind of takes some of the immediacy out of it. It feels like if this had happened to Derek, like actively, if we had, really gotten inside Derek's head this day, that day, it might have had more punch. So basically, there's a quick recap. There's a little bit of sort of filler, catch-up stuff here that didn't seem entirely necessary, but it basically shows, hey, he left his mom after kind of mouthing off to her. He felt bad about it. She was just trying to help him. She was trying to get through to him and warn him about what she had learned at her job, that, he might be in danger. But he wasn't having it because he was being a teenager and he was in a foul mood. And, he just sort of took it out on his mom, and he immediately regretted it, but this kind of shows that. Then Derek proceeds to have his time wasted. He goes to try and find Ernie, who is, his number one companion, his number one buddy, probably love interest. We'll see how that plays out. But, he goes to Ernie's house. He ends up having his time wasted by Ernie's mean sister, Emmy. And then he thinks of, I'll use this new rift power that I've developed, that I've thought about. Instead of rifting to a place, I will rift to a person. So he basically, instead of thinking of Ernie's house, he thinks of Ernie, and he rifts to Ernie spending time with her mother. And it kind of makes him sort of nostalgic, kind of sad and lonesome, because he's seeing, his, the biological mom, biological daughter, something he doesn't have. He feels like he can't interrupt them. He lets Ernie have her time with her mom, and he starts to think of somebody else who he could, a friend, somebody who needed a friend, and he thinks of Tempest. And so he does this rift tracking to teleport or rift his way to Tempest, who's fighting this hell beast. And it's there's this preceding page, these pages after this are really cool, really nice looking pages. You can tell the artist is really putting in, his work here. And there's this really cool scene. Tempest he's like, I'm fighting off this hell beast that's a result, it slipped through the rifts that have been opened. And he's like, I lost my arm fighting one of these. He's like, it's taking everything I've got. And, Sideways is like, is there any way I can help? And he's like, yes, I believe there is. And so basically, Tempest links himself with Derek momentarily, and Derek sees like how much pain Tempest is in and everything like that. But Tempest uses Derek's power to open like a universe rift. So Derek had just been using his powers locally, like on Earth. So this is using Derek's powers to jump like universes, and so he basically superpowers Derek, or at least, gets in Derek's head and unleashes his potential, opens up a universe rift, and they push the demon through that, and he's like, we've dispensed of it once and for all. And Derek's like, wow, this is strangely familiar. He's like, he's like, how are you? Are you okay, Tempest? And he's like, this, it's been several millennia. I think things are starting to take their toll on me. And he's like, that's funny. You don't look a day over the dawn of time. And he's like, thank you. I appreciate your levity. This is a great character building scene and sort of friendship building scene between like mentor and student, and I thought Tempest was pretty endearing and stuff the last time we saw him when he offered to mentor Derek and stuff, and this just kind of builds upon that. This is the strongest thing in this issue, which is kind of a bummer because I really feel like this should be laser focused on what's happening with, in the present with Derek's mom. But in the end of the day, Derek says, I tried to call my mom one more time. No one picked up. And then we're kind of treated to this sort of crime scene where the crime scene investigators are picking up the ringing phone, and Derek's kind of telling all this in hindsight. And I really wish all of this was happening like on the day. This was like taking us out of it, and telling it like in the past tense, I think really takes some of the punch away. You still feel bad for Derek and stuff. You can tell he regrets this day and he regrets how he left his mom. But I mean, this could have been great and powerful, but just some storytelling choices were made here that just kind of weaken it, I think. Still an important issue in Sideways history and in the growth of the character. I'm really curious to see what will happen next time in the next issue, what the fallout will be. But I think we're getting closer to the Sideways that we've kind of been waiting for. I think he's been perfectly likable until, up until this point. I mean, he's made mistakes and everything, but, I think we're going to start to see Sideways, genuinely like embark on this hero's journey and embrace heroics and let go of the idea of fame and fortune and be a hero. So I am looking forward to that. This is an important issue. I do recommend picking it up if you've been a fan of the book. It's just I have to give like a critique when I think a critique is due. But a very important issue in Sideways history. Do pick it up if you're interested in the character at all. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Darkhawk and Sideways. These were both kind of middle of the road issues that just had some problems with them. They weren't bad by any means, but they just weren't the strongest. Now, I do feel like Sideways especially is an important book in that series and that character's history, so definitely pick that up if you're becoming a fan of Sideways like I am. And I'd like to see how the rest of this plays out, and I'm totally ready to see more Sleepwalker and Darkhawk and Infinity War Sleepwalker. I have no idea when that comes out, but I will be on top of that one, and you'll see my thoughts on that on this channel as soon as that hits the stands. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for riding on the Stellar Highway. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff, and I will see you next time.